Thank you so much, Giles, for joining me today. I really appreciate it because this is such a great book and it's so moving. And I did cry reading it. So just to say that, because it is beautiful. And just doing a quick introduction, Giles, which is Giles Paley-Phillips is the award-winning author whose work includes There's a Lion in My Bathroom and Things You Never Knew About Dinosaurs. But 152 Days is his first book for adults. He's appeared on Good Morning Britain and an author special of BBC Two's Eggheads. And is a judge on ITV's Share a Story. He is a producer and co-host of the British Podcast Awards nominated and iTunes Top 10 podcast Blank with Jim Daly. So we're going to talk about your amazing book, 152 Days. And so I just want to ask, so can you just briefly explain what the book is about?
Okay, so the book, it's very nice to see you, by the way. Thank you for having me on. Sorry, I should have said that. So the book is, it's a book that's written in verse. It's a verse novel. So it's not written in sort of standard prose. So I've always been into poetry and back in the days when I've been in bands writing lyrics and stuff. So I've always really loved writing in that style. And I always find for me, it's a good way of conveying emotions. And actually being quite literary about it, and I've always enjoyed that aspect of things. So I really wanted to write this book. It's based on my own experiences of loss. It is semi-autobiographical, although there are fictional elements to it. But the main crux of the story is about a teenage boy whose mother is going through end of life care from a terminal illness. And he is also having, he's suffered from pneumonia, which is so badly that he's having to have physiotherapy to help with relieving his symptoms on his lungs. And so because of her treatments, he's unable to see her. So he's sort of isolated away from her and he's unable to see her. And he's also having to deal with a slightly estranged father who is not coping very well with the situation. Obviously his wife's ill and his son's poorly. And then also there's the sort of slightly more humorous part of the book is this grandmother character called Nanaku, who is quite eccentric, and he finds that he's spending a lot of his days with her, and it's sort of the monotony of spending time with her. At the same time, he's obviously a teenager, which is a difficult time of life anyway. He's dealing with all that kind of normal angst, but then at the same time, he's having to deal with this, with a parent who's very severely ill, and he's quite sort of bereft from the world. And he meets this physiotherapist called Freya, who's helping with his treatments, and he kind of falls in love with her. And there's this unrequited sort of love story, which, I mean, she's a lot older than him, so it's more of like he's got a crush on her kind of thing. But she also allows him to see some hope in the world. So yeah, it's a kind of slight coming of age story, but it's lots of mixture of different things really. But obviously, yeah, the crux of it is about dealing with loss, and a lot of that is from my own experiences. And there are scenes in the book that are taken from my own life. So yeah, it was a book that I think I felt for many years compelled to write, and I'm really pleased to see it out in the world now.
Yeah, no, it is such a beautiful book. And I wanted to ask exactly how much of it is it autobiographical, and how difficult was it to write this book?
So I think the circumstances, so a boy being isolated because of pneumonia from his mum, that is totally from my own life. I was a lot younger than the protagonist in the book. I was 6 or 7. I was 6 when my mum died. Sorry. So I was going through having treatment for pneumonia around that time, and yes, she was in hospital. I wasn't able to see her because of her. So all that stuff is true, and the characters are true. My father had a problem with alcohol, so he was very estranged from us. I'd spent a lot of time with my grandmother. The grandmother character Nanaku is very much, she's a bit of an amalgamation of both my grandparents, but certainly my dad's mum, my paternal grandmother, was very much based on her. So a lot of those situations are similar to like situations I've found myself in standing outside betting shops while she's doing her betting, and so she very much, that aspect of the character is real. Where it changes, obviously, the protagonist is a lot older than I was, and then this sort of, the Freya character is probably an amalgamation of certain older female people that I came into contact with youth groups and church and things like that I would have gone to at that time, and it's probably an amalgamation of different people that that I that kind of took me under their wing to a certain extent. So so those sort of aspects of it are fictional, but the crux of the story is very much my own life. But going back to your other question, there were times where it was hard to write. I mean, it was a compulsion to write it, for sure. I really wanted to tell this story. And I've told the story in kind of, in songs and stuff before. Like in my old band, I had a song called Carpi, which was basically the story of losing my mum. And so, but I always think I was going to write a book about it, and obviously this is what came about. And but there were times where I had to kind of step away from it a bit, just to give myself a bit of a breather from it, and then sort of come back into it. So and certainly when I was when I first started writing it, I think I needed to write at that time. I was at a time where I needed to really express some of the feelings that came out in the book.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, as you say, you were like a lot younger in real life when it happened, and obviously you say the boy was a teenager, but like would you say the teenager had to grow up really quickly and become an adult when this happened? And would you say the same thing kind of happened to you as well?
Yeah. Obviously, I lost my mum a lot younger, but a lot of the scenes and stuff as a teenager in the book are again on my experiences of being a teenager. And a lot of there's a lot of truth in those, and having to grow up very quickly. I mean, we did live in a 1-bedroom flat with my nan for long, for several years. Me and my dad, because my dad was in financial difficulties, so we did have to share this 1-bedroom flat together, and it was it was challenging. So again, those elements are true. So having to grow up very quickly and take responsibility for things, and the usual kind of family things just didn't happen. So it is a bit of a wake-up call when you're in that situation, for sure.
There was a line in it, I remember, so I wrote it down, which was like, and I haven't been able to see mum, not while I'm poorly, not while I've got this phlegm, not for weeks. And I was just wondering, how much do you think not being able to see his mother impacted the young boy? And do you think it makes it even more difficult for closure?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, ironically, the book came out in March 2020, just literally kind of weeks just before we went into lockdown. And I think a lot of people started buying the book because and they saw elements of things that were going on in their own lives, isolating and not being able to see loved ones who are unwell and being separated from. So there was a lot of things in there that was relatable to people at that time. I think had it come out another time, that might not have been quite so relatable, but I think it's just one of those strange ironies that happens sometimes. There's a sort of serendipity in it coming out at that time. So I think so. I think having that, and a lot of people have experienced that recently, having been apart from loved ones who are ill, and it does affect you, quite severely, and having that, missing that time together, I think is, especially if someone's going through through end of life care, for example, that that's a lot of lost time that you wouldn't have been able to share with them, which is precious. In those moments, that is a really precious time. And and I think going back to writing the book, I think a lot of it I was thinking about my mum's loss as well, because it's easy to think about your own loss of that person, but I was thinking my mum would have gone through a grieving process as well. Yeah. She knew she was going to be, she wasn't long for the world. And so she had to deal with that as well. And that must be a heartbreaking kind of thing. And so I was sort of having to look at turning the tables a little bit on it and seeing how she would have felt about that situation.
Yeah, that's so true. Actually, you're right. We see it such a one-sided point of view when we see grief, isn't it? And it is so multidimensional. Everyone is affected. And actually, there was a lot about, I think, the monotony, wasn't it? Where it's just day there's a day, and each rolls into the next. And it just kind of sounds like the boy was going through a certain kind of depression. And would you describe that as depression?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think if you're going through something as traumatic as that, for sure, there's going to be a depression. I think, yeah. And again, I think just being a teenager is tricky. And I think I wanted to convey that to a certain extent, that, I've got teenage sons now, as I know, that they can feel that way sometimes. And I was having to sort of plow my own kind of memories as well about my teen life. And yeah, and I think if you're particularly again that thing that sort of relates to what we've just been through with the pandemic, in that those things became day became a day, became we were at home, we're stuck at home, and again that idea of isolation is very monotonous, and I guess trying to break out of that is very difficult and challenging, so I think that again was another thing that resonated with people, that monotony, when the book came out. And hopefully more people now, if they're reading the book, will be able to relate with it going forward.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's so true. It is true. And it's interesting because I think also this relates to the pandemic as well, which is when you said like Nan never has an answer. She just creates lots of questions. And I was just like, this is exactly what we're going through right now. Lots of questions. And do you think in times of grief, it's important to have like honest, straightforward conversations and get straightforward answers? Is it better to have the difficult conversations than to have dishonesty, you could say, or white lies?
Yeah, I can only speak for my own experiences. And I think as a child, I was probably wrapped up a little bit in cotton wool. And I think certainly we didn't have those frank conversations. It was all kind of almost sort of, I guess like I say, they were sort of trying to protect myself. I've got an older brother as well, but I think he was less protected, but perhaps because I was the younger one, I was protected slightly more. And I think actually it is really important to have those frank conversations, because I think otherwise it just comes out at some other stage. That trauma will, it will germinate over time, and then it will just spring out, and then it will be more disastrous. So I think, it's really important to have those conversations, particularly with children. We've always been very honest with my wife lost her father at a young age, and obviously I've lost both my parents. We're always really honest with our children about what's happened to their grandparents, because that is part of life. It's a huge part of life, losing people, and thankfully they haven't experienced that yet, but it's important that they're aware of it, because otherwise I think it will make it more, it'll be more devastating later on. So I think frank conversations are vital, really.
Yeah, definitely. And actually I was wondering, in a situation like that, as you say, it's like, how important do you think the relationship was between like Nanaku and the teenage boy? And actually, do you think those kind of connections are essential at a time of like grieving?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, I was very lucky. My brother and I were very lucky that we had, I had my paternal grandmother, and I had my maternal grandparents. So I had another grandmother, Queenie, and Bill, and they were fantastic. Where there was clearly a gap left by my mum, and then my dad being, quite estranged from us because of his lifestyle and going out drinking and stuff. So there was a slight neglect there. So we sort of ended up spending a lot of time with our grandparents, and they were amazing. Seriously amazing. So we were very lucky in that respect, and feel that gratitude, and it's something that I continue to feel as I get older, that gratitude of having them. But I know not everybody has that, doesn't have that safety net necessarily. They might not have any family that's able to step in where you've lost someone. So it's very tricky, but I think we were super lucky because we had that, and it's something I'm forever grateful for, because and they were just great characters as well. They were all really wonderful humans that have really kind of been such a constant inspiration in my mind, with regards to not just obviously with writing in mind, but just as a human.
Yeah, no, for sure. Nanaku sounds like an awesome person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was much, and the thing is, I had to tame her down for the book a little bit. The real lady, who her name was Sarah Race, was far madder and far more eccentric and yeah, and just amazing. Yeah, a really amazing character. But so yeah, I tamed her down for the book quite a lot.
Oh, she was so sweet though. I did like it. There was something very mumsy about her, which I quite liked. Yeah, and you can really kind of feel her character. Like she was this maternal presence around the young boy, thank God.
Yeah.
It was really sweet because I think there was this really sad instance where you talk about the young boy at the station that Nanaku had seen sleeping, I think in the tube station. And do you think like he was actually a reflection of the main character?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it, but yeah, possibly there is some similarities there, and like I say, that sort of that compassion, I think, is something I wanted to convey, because they were compassionate people, that those grandparent figures in my life. So it was important to convey that in some way, and using that as a device. She did work in the underground, my grandmother, as well. She did. So yeah, yeah. So she had, and she was always very proud of it as well. When we ever went to London, she would always make a big thing out of it, and she'd try and see old colleagues and stuff. We would have day trips to London. We used to go up to London, the two of us, and my brother as well. And yeah, she'd make a big thing out of it, and we'd have to go, and we'd waste lots of time going to try and find all our old colleagues. But yeah, it was brilliant. So those elements were certainly something that I remembered and really wanted to keep in the book. But yeah, certainly I think there is something to be said for that analogy, for sure.
Oh, it's so sad, yeah, because I think when you wrote that character, I was just like, oh, it just seems so much like him, and like he was almost heading towards that character. He was becoming that character. So I'm not sure if it was like intentional or not, but I was just like, oh God, it looks like sort of a prophecy, you could say.
Well, yeah, and there are those scenes on the beach where he's kind of taken himself off and is sort of living rough for 24 hours or 48 hours, whatever it is. So yeah, so certainly I think there is an element of that for sure, that there's a possibility that he would have become so kind of detached from the world, that yeah, he was feeling that way.
I actually wanted to ask as well, because obviously this is something you've actually been through yourself, which is how much is poverty a factor in sort of the young boy's isolation and depression as well?
I think this certainly plays a role, and it's something that I guess I didn't play. I mean, it's obviously it's alluded to in the book that they're having to downsize because of, and that's something that we did as a family actually. Before my mum passed away, we had to downsize because we had quite a large house, and then we downsized to a much smaller house that was more. She was able to cope with more, and both parents were able to cope with more, and then yeah, as kind of life went on, particularly my teenage years, my dad was in and out of employment and was ill because of his drinking. So yeah, poverty became quite a big part of our life. It was often as a real teenager, I was often sort of embarrassed about bringing people back, because we had this 1-bedroom flat, which was my nan's residential flat. We weren't really supposed to live there, but we kind of moved in. And we always had to keep it quiet when the rent man came around to check. So it was a kind of a weird existence. But yeah, so it was something that I definitely wanted to put in the book, and certainly that idea of not necessarily being able to hang out with friends and that kind of stuff as well. So that obviously adds to the isolation for sure. And it was something I experienced, and yeah, that kind of level of like I say, that sort of slight embarrassment about not wanting to bring friends home, because it's not a particularly nice environment to, you certainly couldn't have like people over to stay or anything. And then we, there was obviously no garden. We were in like this little flat upstairs in a like I say, a residential kind of area. So it was a weird situation. I did want to add that to the book. It was definitely another element I wanted to put in there, but hopefully not, you know, played it up too much.
No,
In
no,
respect to the story, yeah.
yeah, no, it just, no, definitely. I think, you know, you just felt so much for this child, isn't it? Where, you know, he was just going through so many levels of grief, just from different areas. And I actually wanted to ask, like, how much of the book do you think the boy was running away from what was happening to his mother?
I think it's probably the entire book, and I think it's only meeting that Freya character that kind of, you know, makes him see there is, you know, what the potential of life, I guess, and that there is, you know, there is love and kindness and compassion and all those elements are there, and they're worth living for. But yeah, I think probably the entire story is him kind of running away, or certainly feeling, like I say, that detachment, which we know we've talked about depression and stuff, and I think he obviously felt all those things, and that certainly that detachment from the world and from his own family at times as well, whether that's forced detachment or because, you know, he wasn't being shown the support from the parent that's kind of
Yeah.
around. So yeah, I think probably a large element of it is him trying to escape his situation.
Yeah, and actually, this is a more broad, kind of general question, which is, it's a strange thing that, like, death is inevitable, but why do you think we still grieve?
Well, I guess grief is part of that, is part of the love, isn't it? I think, you know, you have to see it as a thing. Love and grief are kind of intertwined, and, you know, we grieve because we've loved, you know, because we've loved someone or something. And grief can be, it's not necessarily always a person we're grieving for. It can sometimes be for a missed opportunity or a friendship or a lost, like an employment we've lost or something. So it could be, you know, it can be something like that, but it's because we have passion for that thing, or we love it. And I think that is possibly why we grieve so much, because, you know, it's on the same spectrum as love, you know, they kind of are intertwined. That's how I've always sort of seen it anyway. You know, I've loved hard, so I grieve hard.
That's true. Yeah, no, that you're right. We're quite binary, isn't it, as human beings?
Yeah.
And actually, and for you, like, it looked like for the boy, it seemed like just over maybe 300 days, things started to turn around, isn't it, for him? And what about for yourself? Like, what do you think? How long did it take for that to happen, where you could see a little ray of sunshine?
I think there's sort of been moments, I guess, during my own life,
Mm.
where I've, you know, I've had lots of great experiences. You know, I think things like discovering creativity, like
Mm.
when I wasn't very good at school, and I struggled with kind of academia. And then when I went to college, I met some kind of like-minded people and joined a band and started playing guitar. And then, you know, finding that outlet was amazing. You know, that was a really incredible thing for me to have that. And then I could start, you know, telling stories or telling
Mm.
my own angst and putting my own things out there through the medium of music. And then obviously going on to, and obviously meeting my wife had a huge impact on me.
Oh,
Meeting that other person that, you know, and she's had similar experiences to me. She lost a parent very young, so having that as well, that we've got this, you know, this one, you know, this thing that we both have experienced in our lives, and makes us very empathetic to one another and other people, I hope. So yeah, so meeting her, and obviously like then getting into writing and stuff. So, but I think, yeah, having that creative outlet has been a big thing for me, to be able to, you know, and I always say it to people, if it's whatever it might be, if you've got some little creative thing that, you know, it's so important to hold on to that, because it helps so much. You know, some people think, oh, I'm not creative, but there'll be something there that you like, whether it's writing, painting, um crosswords,
Yeah.
I don't know, like knitting, crochet. I'm sorry, I'm going to stop listing things, but you know, wherever it might be, podcasts, you know, have something, really dive into that when you can, because I think it's such great therapy to have that. So I think, yeah, for me, that the grieving process has been off and on, but I think it helps to have these things, like to be able to write this book was brilliant, was amazing, was very cathartic for me personally. So yeah, so I think that's probably a waffly answer to your question.
No, I love it. It's so true, because I was going to actually ask you, which is how do you deal with your grief now, which obviously is through creative outlets, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that, yeah, and actually, and that is your response also to if you were to help someone else who is grieving. I guess that's the response as well, isn't it? Hold on to creativity.
Yeah, but yeah, I think if you can find a way, it's finding an outlet, I think. And some, for some people, obviously an outlet could be sport, it could be, you know, like I say, it could be something creative, whatever it might be, but have that outlet that you can use to fuel that energy. You know, if it's negative energy, you can put it into something positive, doing something positive.
Definitely.
So I think that's what I would always say, for sure, with that. But yeah, we all do it in different, you know, we all do it in different ways. I mean, if you're grieving, we all grieve in different ways. But I think, like, again, what we alluded to earlier, having those frank conversations, I think, you know, it is really important to talk to people. And it's hard sometimes to reach out, but I think if you are going through a difficult time and you're finding that the grief is really challenging you, then I think if you can sort of speak to people about it, I think that's really, really vital.
Definitely. I'm like, it's still, I think even in the Asian community, we need to be a lot better at talking about it. So it's thank you for also talking about it with me, because this is like the conversation that needs to be had, especially in the last year where we've had a lot of grieving. And we don't usually have it so much in our faces. Usually it's always very private, but now it's everywhere. So I think it's just a really important topic to cover. And guess what, Giles? I did exactly the same thing. I played guitar. The first thing I did was reach for a guitar when I was 7 years old and didn't stop playing.
Amazing.
After grieving, it was the best thing to do. So yeah.
Music is such a, I mean, it's the thing I always go back to. I mean, this week I've been playing around recording some stuff, but it's just, if I'm ever in a darker mood, I just grab my guitar, I've got a bass in the car, and I'll just try and make up some silly riffs or something, and it's just the best thing. It just always lifts my spirit. Or listening to music, just putting on some music,
Yeah,
going for a walk, put some
definitely.
music on. It's got an amazing thing. I think, I'm sure there's been lots of scientific experiments, but it seems to change the chemicals, I think, in our bodies, and I think certain notes do as well. I mean, there's certain songs that really do change the chemicals, and I just,
Yeah,
yeah, just can be, I don't know, I suppose it is a mood changer as well, music, but yeah, it's a wonderful thing. I'm so grateful to have started playing the guitar at 16 and learning the guitar, because it's been such a I've done lots of things with music, but it's been an amazing thing. I'm kind of grateful to myself for getting a cheap, crappy guitar from Argus and trying
yeah,
to
I
learn
did
to
the
play.
same.
Yeah,
Hilarious. Yeah.
yeah.
No, you're right. It's so true. It brings you to a different place in your mind. It's a very tranquil place. And it's quite meditative, I find.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, when you're just sort of sitting there, like if I'm just sort of trying to learn work out a riff, or trying to play something, or I've been helping a friend record some music, and I've been playing bass, and I'm a guitarist really, so I'm sort of trying to learn a bit of how to sort of really structure the bass properly, and
Oh, it's hard.
yeah, and so
It's
it's like
hard.
learning a new skill, but it's like nice, and when you start getting it right, it's something, yeah, there's something brilliant
Yeah,
about it, and yeah, it's the whole process, the playing, the listening, yeah, it's
definitely.
yeah, it gives me a lot of hope.
Definitely. Well, Giles, I hope to actually hear some of your playing at some point. So please do send me some stuff. Because
Well, you can listen to my band we are on Spotify.
Yay.
My old band, Little Ten, and my current band, Burnt House. We've got stuff on Spotify. So yeah.
Nice.
Check us out.
I definitely will.
Thank you.
Can't wait. Thank you so much for speaking with me, Giles. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.